Hello everyone and welcome to a special edition of the India Story. We are coming to you from London. We're actually coming to you from St. James's Court, which, if you know anything about the Indian community and London, this is almost treated as a second Indian High Commission, if you like. And this is where a particularly important conference has been taking place, the India Global Forum, which has been trying to build relations between India and Britain. And this week, we actually did see a fairly landmark development. We had the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, coming and speaking at the India Global Forum, and he signaled something dramatic. He said that Labour was a changed party. He said, forget about the shadows of the past. The Labour Party will be very interested in building a strategic partnership and a strategic relationship from India and going past what some people have been calling the mistakes of the past. Now, this is a particularly important statement that he made because, number one, the Labour Party is very likely to win the general election here next year, which means that Sir Keir Starmer could be the next Prime Minister of Britain. And number two, Labour has been seen as being not favourably inclined to India for a period of time, especially under Sir Jeremy Corbyn. So, we're having the man who could be the next Prime Minister of Britain coming and speaking out here and saying, we're going to change all of that. There's going to be a reset. And I'm very pleased to tell you that he's going to be joining us right here on the India Story in a very special, exclusive interview where he elaborates on that theme. And it's not just Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, who's going to be joining us, the man who could be the next Prime Minister, but we also have with us the Shadow Secretary for Works, Jonathan Ashworth, who is the person who will be leading all jobs and other stuff. Almost certainly going to be a cabinet minister in a Labour government if it is to come up. He will be sitting with us right here in just a couple of minutes and taking us through that Labour reset in more details. And we're going to get business people joining us as well. Jiten Vyas is going to be talking to us about a lot of the relationships between Britain and India and how that takes forward. Other businessmen are going to be talking to us as well. We're going to have Dr. Vijay Chathaiwale, who's in charge of the BJP's entire overtures to the rest of the world, who's in charge of the BJP's overseas wing, who's been leading a lot of the diaspora outreach. He's going to be talking to us about what he makes of the remarks. And also Manoj Radwa, the person who's put the entire India Global Forum together, will be wrapping up and giving us his sense on the entire week and how major this shift in Labour's policies could be for India. All of that coming up for you on this show. But let's start by quickly taking you through the major headlines.
Karnataka High Court has dismissed Twitter's plea challenging the Indian government's order to block tweets and accounts. Social media giant ordered to pay a fine of 50 lakh rupees within 45 days. Twitter had challenged 10 different blocking orders issued by the Indian government between February 2, 2021 and February 28, 2022. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi pitches for uniform civil code in the country, says Indian constitution mandates it. Opposition parties say remarks by the Prime Minister only to divert attention from real issues like unemployment and Manipur violence. Bill likely to be taken up in the Parliament session in July. Violence remains unabated in India's Manipur. 3 people, including a policeman, killed in the last 2 days after fresh clashes erupted in the state. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi visits relief camps in Imphal for urgent action, calls for meetings with like-minded parties on the issue. Huge relief for international credit card holders. The Indian government has put on hold its decision on including credit card transactions abroad in the liberalized remittance scheme. Not just that, the timeline for implementing a higher tax collected at source or TCS rates has been extended to October 1st.
And let's jump straight in to our special exclusive interview with Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, as he signals a reset in Labour's relationships with India. And it's a really significant set of comments and remarks that he made. So we've also got a reaction from the Indian High Commissioner to the UK. Vikram Doraiswamy talks to us about why these are very, very important statements. I spoke to both Sir Keir Starmer and then to Vikram Doraiswamy just a couple of days back, minutes after he made a very important speech at the India Global Forum, laying out Labour's new policies when it comes to India. Well, if you've been following all the opinion polls, then it seems rather likely that at the next general election, Sir Keir Starmer, the head of the Labour Party, is going to become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And he now joins us for this very special exclusive interview. Sir Keir, great to be talking to you. You seem to have just made a very major policy speech where you're saying a Labour government under your prime ministership would really be viewing India as a strategic partner, will be breaking from the shadows of the past and trying to build a strategic relationship.
Yeah, strategic relationship is exactly the right description. A UK-India strategic partnership, which can bring with it economic security, really important, but also climate security and global security. So we're talking about something which is truly strategic, truly a partnership, looks forward, not backwards, recognises our shared history that we have, but actually looks at a modern India and a modern UK and the next chapter of the journey that we can take together.
But when you're talking about the shadows of the past, some people are also wondering whether you're referring to the Labour Party. You're saying the Labour Party, you just said this is a changed Labour Party. What exactly do you mean by that in the context of India?
Well, we're a changed Labour Party, very much in the last 2 or 3 years. We are a party that has reflected and changed in our outlook, both here in the UK, in the economy, etc., but also globally. And so far as India is concerned, your question, it is that ability to say, look, what is modern India? What is a modern United Kingdom, and how do we together have a strategic future? And I try to set out, if you like, the principles on which that will be based, which started with the word respectful and open, two modern nations going forward together strategically. And that's at the heart of the speech that I delivered this afternoon.
But when you're saying, is there a signal there that the Labour Party is also pressing a reset? Because sometimes it seemed as if the Labour Party is not as keen on India as maybe some of the other parties are and has its own hesitations. Certain controversies have happened in the past over questions like Kashmir, which you changed just after you took over as the head of the Labour Party. Is there a reset button that you're pressing?
I think reset is the right word, and as you describe. And it's not a narrow question. It's actually a broader question. As we look at modern India, look at modern UK, we face global challenges in relation to the climate, the economy. We've just been through COVID, and both India and the UK helped massively with the rollout of the vaccine. There are things now that I think have changed the context and allow us to say we move forward from here, as I say, looking forward, not backwards.
Part of Labour's policies towards India has it been to some extent influenced by domestic politics. I mean, I know there's lots of political issues, Pakistani constituents, Mirpuri constituents. Has that been part of it in the past?
I think there's always going to be an element of domestic politics, but this is actually a speech that I hope goes above that to look at what are the international challenges that we face together. What are the strategic relations that we can go forward with? Take a trade deal. We all want a trade deal. We have that ambition. That's a shared ambition. Obviously going through a few rounds at the moment. But I want to look beyond just trade at, how do we respond to the climate challenge together? There are huge questions which both of our great countries, great nations are facing there when it comes to climate and to global security, which is, not just between, India and the UK, but actually how together do we influence other countries around the world when it comes to global security?
Right, let's just turn to the Indian diaspora. Of course, the person whose job you're trying to take is actually of Indian origins, which I'm sure is there on your mind.
Look, I want us to win the election. I want a Labour government so we can change our country for the better for millions of people, including, of course, the Indian community here. But I do celebrate, along with everybody else, the fact that we do have a Prime Minister who is British Indian. This is a fantastic thing for our country. So what other disagreements I may have, and we'll be back at Prime Minister's questions before too long, taking lumps out of each other and arguing rigorously about pretty well everything under the sun. But that we do celebrate. We celebrate it here in the UK, and I think it is rightly celebrated in India as well.
So from the point of view of the diaspora here in India, it's actually been quite a success story. The Indian diaspora sometimes says don't club all of South Asia together, because the Indian diaspora here, 44% of them are in the top 2 quintiles, if you like, of the population. Other South Asian communities perhaps not quite successful.
No, it has been a success story. And if you look at the contribution that the Indian community, but Indian businesses in particular, have made to our economy. And contribution is probably the wrong word, because it is part of our makeup now, our society, our economy. And so it is a success story, and I hope it can be an even greater success story as we go forward.
Right, thank you so much for talking to us. If I was to sum this up to say Labour pressing a reset and wanting strategic ties with India, would that be a fair summary?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kazaki.
Thank you.
So Labour Party very clearly seems to be signalling some sort of a reset when it comes to India. And that's important because right now they are well ahead in the polls, and you might well have Sir Keir Starmer as the next Prime Minister of Britain. I just wanted to get the reaction now of the Indian High Commissioner to the UK to what seems to be a fairly major policy speech. And it seems to be Labour, in so many words, saying we're going to press the reset button when it comes to India.
Well, Sir Keir has already made this point privately to us in my first meeting with him. And I think he's underlined his recognition of the fact that Labour and a possible Labour government would want to take the India relationship a lot more seriously and to build it up in truly strategic terms. He defined the effort for an FTA also in strategic terms. He looked at the possible partnership in a clear strategic construct. So I'd say that's a clear message that we've got. But I should also point out, I mean, obviously our goal is to ensure that our relations with a country as important as the UK are basically bipartisan. We look for the best possible relations with the country, irrespective of who's running it. And indeed, in our case, our approach to many of our major partners is bipartisan. So I think it's important that we nurture that line.
I was actually about to refer to the bipartisan point, because that's clearly one of the things that is working so well with the United States, that whether it's a Republican or the Democrats or whoever the president is, they seem to be believing in close ties with India. Here there was that slight concern that does Labour feel that way or does Labour not feel that way? So to that extent you must be quite delighted with hearing the sort of comments that are now coming.
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was an excellent speech from the point of view of the relationship, not just the point of view of India, that the leader of the opposition was making such a clear statement of his interest in a relationship that recognizes the importance of our partnership for each other, for our respective mutual benefit. But of course, there is an older history, if you will. Labour has had a long and very good relationship with India, even in the past. So, in a sense, it's recapturing that space.
It was more in the recent times, I think, that some statements were made about Kashmir and about other things, which are partly also maybe for domestic politics, which obviously is there. He again seemed to talk a lot about recognizing the success of the Indian diaspora, and he almost seemed to be saying that just because they are successful, it doesn't mean it should be held against them in some manner.
Yes, I think, but that's also, I mean, there is a point in that's domestic politics, so I won't comment on that. But the larger point about how Labour wants to position itself as a party that also supports aspiration, enterprise and success. I think that was the point he was trying to make. I'd also point to one point that he made, which I think was of significance, which is that he talked about it as a forward-looking relationship, a relationship between India and the UK that is based on our future prospects and what we bring to each other. And I think that is really important.
In fact, let me just get you to elaborate on that a little bit, because sometimes when you're talking about India-UK relationship, you're either saying, oh, remember the empire, or remember the British Raj, or remember the Kohinoor, or remember food and cricket. That's what it often seems to be about. But there's a lot more that presumably can be done, and I think that's what Labour's very clearly saying here.
Yes, well, absolutely. This is the point that I was also making, that look at the number of Indian businesses that are here. Look at the opportunities that India presents the UK in tech, in innovation, in obviously investment. The climate change piece. I mean, frankly, if the UK wants to be a leader in green financing and green transitions, there is no better place to make that happen than in India. So I think there is recognition that a relationship between India and the UK, we can and of course should compete on the cricket pitch. We can and of course should compete about which has the better Indian restaurants, India or the UK.
Surely that's not a subject of any debate, is there?
Our British friends like to compete about that, saying they've got some of the best Indian restaurants in the world, and I say yes, outside India. So, which is of course I think a fair point, and it certainly can compete for that point. But the larger point I think is that we should be informed by our history, but we needn't be conditioned by it.
Well, I'm not sure how much interest all of that got in India when those remarks were actually made, but I can tell you it's really important. Why? Because there's a bipartisan consensus around relationships with India in the United States. Now, there seems to be a similar bipartisan consensus after the events of this week in the UK itself. So a transatlantic bipartisan consensus that India is an important strategic partner. Why is it also relevant? Because frankly, ties between Labour and India have not been particularly good in the recent past. Here's a quick summary and a quick analysis of why these remarks are particularly important.
While the ruling Conservative Party in the United Kingdom has been consistently wooing the 1.8 million strong British Indian community and apparently reaping the dividends, the main opposition Labour Party has gotten into one altercation after another with the Indian diaspora. But the current leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, is on a mission to change this. At the 2023 edition of the UK India Week, he called India incredible and powerful, a country whose partnership would be key in case the Labour Party comes to power in the next elections.
There are lots of issues in the Labour Party where, over the last 2 years, we have openly taken the decision to change our party, to look out to the world in a different way, and to recognise when it comes to India what an incredible, powerful, important country India is, a modern India going forward, and to ensure that we have the right relationship as we go forward.
But it might take more than speeches to overcome the hostility of recent years, especially under the reign of Jeremy Corbyn. In August of 2019, the Labour Party passed a resolution against the abrogation of J&K's special status and even sought international intervention. It later backtracked. A month later, a violent protest reportedly led by Labour MP Liam Bryan took place outside the Indian High Commission in London. In November of the same year, the co-founder of the Hindu Council UK said that the Labour Party was anti-India and anti-Hindu. In April of 2020, the party announced a review into the impact of COVID on minorities. The team included Sikhs and Muslims, but surprisingly no Hindus. In April this year, following Hindu-Muslim tension in Leicester, all Hindu councillors were deselected from standing for re-election. Keir Starmer appears to have been taking steps to change this anti-agnostic position from condemning Hinduphobia to clearly stating that Kashmir is an issue between India and Pakistan. His latest pronouncements appear more significant in the light of predictions for the general elections which are expected to be held in 2024. The Labour Party may enjoy a landslide victory by winning 470 of the 650 constituencies. The ruling Conservative Party may be limited to 129 seats. With a high-stakes battle ahead, the Labour Party seems to be eyeing the all-important British Indian votes. There are around 1.8 million people of Indian origin in the United Kingdom, making it the largest minority ethnic group in the country. With a sizable majority of UK Indians having historically supported the Labour Party, this number has been falling in recent years. In 2010, around 6 in every 10 British Indians backed Labour as per a survey. Now that has fallen to just 4 in every 10. At the same time, there has been no decline in Pakistani or Bangladeshi diaspora support for Labour. Apart from politics, there are other more important reasons why the Labour Party might be developing a soft spot for India. The United Kingdom has a shortage of over 3 lakh people in its workforce post-Brexit. Meanwhile, in 2020, Indians got the highest number of skilled worker visas in the United Kingdom. With the easing of rules, this can be increased further. The second issue is that Britain is heavily dependent on Beijing, with imports of around 50,000 types of products taking place only from China. Now the UK is already India's 7th largest export destination, and this can be stepped up to replace China. The third problem is that London has been seeking to establish independent trade ties outside of the European Union, with bilateral trade growing by over 22% between 2009 and 2021. Now there is potential to boost it further with a free trade agreement.
But I think one thing has become crystal clear, both from last week, whatever happened in the United States, and what we are seeing, what seems to be unfolding in the UK as well, is also the power of the diaspora in changing policies and in influencing parties across the world. Who better to talk to us about that than Dr. Vijay Chathaiwala, who's in charge of the foreign affairs wing of the Bharatiya Janata Party, of course, the ruling party in India. Thank you so much, Dr. Chathaiwala, for joining us. We saw it in America last week. I think we seem to be seeing it happening in Britain and elsewhere. Do you think it is fair to say that the diaspora is really starting to influence policies around the world?
See, first of all, thank you for this conversation. Diaspora was always influential in many countries, but they were never united for any particular purpose. And the major change that has happened in last 6, 7, 8 years is that now diaspora is coming together to foster the bilateral relationship. First, a unique case took place at the time of civil nuclear deals between India and US, where Indian diaspora really galvanized and lobbied to Congress to ratify that deal. And then later on it didn't go ahead. But Mr. Modi has a unique advantage of it works as a magnet. He works as a magnet to bring diaspora together. And that has been also very, I would say that one of the most critical factors in bringing diaspora. Now, for example, if you take US diaspora, they are all well educated, not only in IT, but also in other business sectors, in doctors, professional, hoteliers. You name a business and now their Indian origin people are there. Their income, annual income, average annual income Indians in US is almost twice that of average American income. So
that is true here also.
That is also
in Britain,
true.
It's 44% of Indians
almost,
are in the top two
countries. And at the additionally, they are all law-abiding citizens. They gel well with local communities. They contribute to the local community's welfare. So their overall impression of Indian American people in US or even here is very good. And that I think is a very big.
They pay taxes. They don't ask for benefits.
They don't ask benefit. So these
so
are
the Indian community essentially they sort of pay their taxes. They're contributing to these countries.
Yeah.
They're not asking for dole or living off benefits or
Correct.
asking for anything. They're giving back rather than taking.
Yeah, I guess this is the biggest strength, and Indians origin people are very comfortable with multiple identities. They are as good a British citizen as good they are proud of their Indian heritage and ancestry, and that is also playing a very big role. What Mr. Modi has done is to give them a bigger purpose of making them part of India's story, success story, and I guess this is the unique paradigm shift that has taken place in last 7, 8 years.
Is this part of a very deliberate strategy which you and others have been working on? How do we utilize the power of the diaspora in a very strategic manner to make change?
I think Prime Minister's vision was always that these people are my unofficial ambassadors. So they can be my best messengers because they live in that community, they talk to their people. For example, he has made appeal that whenever you come to India, bring one non-Indian person with you as a tourist. again to showcase what India is doing, because seeing is believing. So he is leveraging the presence of diaspora in multiple ways, and that is showing the result in a different manner.
So just coming to what we've seen this week here, are you surprised almost by seeing what seems to be a very radical shift in policy on the behalf of Labour? Do you see it as a radical shift, by the way?
I think there is a paradigm shift there also, and it was not surprise, but if you see what Labour was, say 2 years or 3 years ago, now I can see that there is a major shift, and it's a welcome shift. They have understood the importance of Indian diaspora. They have understood the importance of India as a country and its partnership with UK, and the things are actually moving in the right direction. Of course, there will be some elements who would criticize India for one reason or other. That is all welcome as long as it doesn't hurt the overall strategic partnership between two countries.
One problem in Britain, which is not there in the US, is the other aspect of domestic politics. I mean, there's not just Indian communities out here, there's a large Pakistani community.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not as well assimilated and also maybe not the same income generating, but their presence as voting people in many constituencies puts pressure, and that pressure has often come on Labour MPs to say, let's take anti-Indian stances because of my local Pakistani supporters.
You see, if they have to take sides in favor of their constituents, India will have to take a position which is of India's interest.
Yeah.
And that is the way it will be played out. So I don't want to go into specific cases, but as long as they can very well serve their constituents, it is their duty. But as long as they don't go against Indian interest explicitly, we are okay with it.
All right. Dr. Jitawale, so interesting week.
Yeah,
very
very
you think? It's a big week, right?
It is a big week.
It's actually been a big fortnight for India.
Absolutely,
USA last week and the UK this week.
This week, and after 10 days in France.
So
So amazing month.
It could be an interesting Indian summer in more
Summer,
ways than
absolutely.
Indian
Yeah.
summer.
Before everyone goes to vacation here.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
good.
right.
Okay,
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Vikram.
Well, one of the highlights, of course, of the India Global Forum are the number of Indian businessmen who've come out here to try and make a pitch, to try and figure out whether they can do business out of the UK. And let's face it, there are important reasons why the UK is an important base. There is a connection. There is a historical connection. There's a language connection. There's a cultural connection. There's a food connection. And by the way, for Indian businessmen, there's another factor. It's far easier to get visas to come and do work or have personal vacations, if you like, in Britain than it is in Europe right now. We're getting a Schengen visa is a real nightmare. So let's now get in somebody who knows all about that. He's the Chief Commercial Officer for VFS Global, and therefore the person who's often in the firing line when it comes to all those hassles and all those issues around getting visas. Well, I can tell you one thing for Indians right now, where the UK clearly stands out, especially in relationship with the other countries in Europe, and that is simply the ease of traveling. You can get a 5-year or a 10-year visa to the United Kingdom, so you can come out here and spend some time here. Try and get a Schengen visa, and you'll know what suffering is really all about. And joining us to talk to us about a lot of that, Jiten Vyas, Chief Commercial Officer of VFS Global, which is actually the face of it, right? When all those Indians are going there and saying, "Where's my visa and where's my Schengen visa?" They're normally interacting with VFS. Absolutely. So it's tough, right, for Europe compared to Britain.
Look, thank you, Vikram, for having me here today. Well, visas is a very, very critical, important topic for all the Indians that want to travel out of India into the UK, into the US, and of course the European Union, very clearly. On the back of the pandemic, UK and India opened the respective borders. We've seen a significant travel moving from India into the UK. Tourists, of course, for every Indian, the first aspirational destination is the UK, London. They have to visit London, the London Eye, and so on. We've seen tourism increase. We've seen student traffic increase significantly. This year alone, we should see around 145,000 students, Indian students in the UK universities around the UK. Business travel has also taken a significant jump. On the back of the FTA discussions, and that's been the topic through the India Global Forum, the India Week this week in London, we anticipate the topic of global mobility to only increase and gain momentum. Looking at the comparative between UK and the Schengen, well, the UK has its own sets of visa regulations and policies as part of their visa and immigration policy. The Schengen, which is a massive block of 27, 28 member states, has their own set of regulations. In the last few weeks, we've seen a great deal of improvement in the numbers going from India into the Schengen bloc.
Okay, look, but from a British point of view, is that a competitive advantage? Because let's face it, Schengen may have improved, but it's still a torture. Try getting a visa to any of the countries in Europe, and it's torture. Here, 5-year visa, 10-year visa, you're done for 10 years, and you can do business on the back of that, right? So is that a competitive advantage that Britain has?
Truly, the United Kingdom, Great Britain has, as part of their visa and immigration policy, they have the ability to offer visas for students, for businessmen, ranging from 2, 5, 10 years. They even offer a priority visa and a super priority visa for those individuals that need a visa within 24 to 48 hours.
It costs a lot, by the way. Those 10-year visas and priority costs a lot of money, but you can get it if you want.
It does cost a significant amount, which are the fees prescribed by the UK government. What it does is it gets you a visa within a very short period of timeline.
So, we are talking to the British authorities out there about, and Labour is clearly signaling and others are signaling, let's go out, let's build that partnership with India. Making that easier, is that something which you think will continue to play a role? Making it easier for Indians to come out here and do business, and that, as you said, is a part of the discussion here.
Absolutely. The traffic from India to the UK has been increasing. This year we expect close to 700,000 visas being processed. I mentioned about 145,000 students in UK universities. This is only going to improve. The two governments are very clear. There is a history, a cultural history between the UK and India. And now with trade ties booming, we see these numbers only improving. Whether it's within the tourism sector, the business, the student, and even a whole lot of British nationals traveling to India as part of their tourist season plans. And we hope that back end of this year, which is the tourist season into India, the number should improve from UK into India as well to support India's tourism foray.
So let's just try a little bit more to understand what seems to be a clear reset that the Labour Party has indicated, and specifically directly in those very terms by the head of the Labour Party, by the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. But to get a chance to understand this further and also see what implications that could have on business relations between the two countries, especially under a new Labour administration if it were to come next year. It's a great pleasure to be joined by Jonathan Ashworth, who's Shadow Secretary for Works and Pension, and therefore all this question of employment and work and what's going to happen out there is very much in your remit. I said if a new Labour government comes next year, it's looking rather likely, isn't it, right now, with the lead on the polls that you've got?
Well, we will see, but I'm absolutely delighted to be at the forum today to talk about the relationships between the United Kingdom and India. That's a really, really key relationship for us in the Labour Party. And I think the fact that we've brought our prospective Prime Minister here, Keir Starmer, that you've got senior members of a potential Labour cabinet here, like myself, is an indication of the seriousness in which we take the relationship with India and the way in which we do, if you like, want to reset that relationship. We are looking to the future, but I'm also deeply aware that historically the ties between the UK Labour Party and India were deep. Our bonds were strong, and I want to rekindle that. And one of the things that I'm exploring, both as a shadow welfare secretary, a potential welfare secretary, but also as a Leicester MP, where, as many of your viewers will know, there is a huge Gujarati community, so Kemcho to everybody.
Your Gujarati is probably much better than mine, actually.
Marunam Jonathan Ashworth Che. That's about as good as it gets, I'm afraid.
That's great.
That's about as good as it gets. But look, I know there is so much more we can do to strengthen our links. It's why, for example, I've said that Leicester, a city which has grown, which is dynamic, which is the strong city it is today because of generations of Indians, either directly from Gujarat, sometimes from the Punjab, or have come to Leicester directly, or via Uganda, Malawi, Kenya, and so on in the 1970s and 60s. Leicester is such a dynamic city because of those relationships. And I know we can do more. That's why I want to set up a Leicester-India trade partnership so we can do more in Leicester. But as somebody who wants to be the welfare secretary, I really want to learn from the way in which Prime Minister Modi has used AI, has used digital, has used technology to transform your social security services in India.
Digital payments, of course, which I've been struggling to do in London a little bit. I keep forgetting you can't do, wiring money or Paytm or QR codes as easily as you can in India. But before we come to the business part of it, let me just come back to the reset. You're right. There used to be a strong relationship between Indians and India and the Indian community and Labour. It's been there for a long period of time. Then it seemed to have started to slide. It went off a cliff almost, a few years ago. Is this a serious reset that Labour is pressing now? To say that, look, we are serious about it. We want to build relations with India. We would like to pursue a strategic relationship with India. And I think Sir Kate put it directly that mistakes may have been made, but this is a changed Labour Party.
This is most certainly a changed Labour Party. And this is a Labour Party which is absolutely determined to have a good partnership with the private sector across the United Kingdom, but a strategic partnership with key economies across the world. And India is one of the most key economies. I mean, the Prime Minister Modi has turned it into something like the 10th biggest economy, something like the 5th biggest economy in the world, something like that. So we want that strategic partnership, absolutely, and we do want to reset. We understand there have been difficulties, and I think, look, I think when you have a strong partnership, I think we've all got to be honest. There are times when different members of Parliament may want to speak out on different issues. Yeah, that's political life in the UK. But in the end, one of the most important partnerships for the UK is India, both in terms of trade, both in terms of the advances that we can make together. And look, why look at it like this? Yeah, look at the industries, which are the industries of the future: life sciences, biotech, AI, green technologies. The world leaders in those industries is United Kingdom and India. And if we can have a partnership working together, we can be transformative. Remember, look, India helped lead. I used to lead on health for the Labour Party in the pandemic. India led on helping the world escape from that pandemic with its pharmaceutical base, its research, its vaccines, its therapies that it designed. Yeah, the UK has got great strengths in life sciences and biotech. I'm a policy fellow at Cambridge University. I spend a lot of time at Cambridge University. We are world leaders, and as are India. And I want us to work much more closely together, not just on life sciences, but also on AI.
And the other area to build partnerships, which you were referring to, is that you're building the technological. Again, very clearly with the United States, there was a very strong element of technology that was underlying it.
Yeah.
India is doing some great work in technology and making it accessible to people. So build those relationships, build them in AI, build them in digital, build them in payments, for example.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be a priority?
Yeah, because look, I think AI can transform the way in which we deliver our welfare services here. I mean, it's unbelievable that we have here a welfare system where our transactions are around, 215, 220 billion pounds, a year, where we are paying out to millions of people, and yet we're responsible for probably the biggest IT estate in Europe. Millions of lines of code, huge compute power, and yet we're still losing £8 billion in fraud and mistakes and error. Yeah, there's pensioners are losing out on £2 billion worth of their entitlement. I mean, these figures might not sound very big in an Indian economy context, but in a UK economy context, these are very significant figures. We should be using AI and technology to better deliver these services to our citizens, yeah? And we should be using AI and technology to better help people get into good jobs. It will make our economy more productive. And I really want to build a partnership and explore how Indian tech companies have been able to deliver this agenda for Prime Minister Modi's government in India, and see what lessons we can learn here and see what we can adopt here, and whether there are some partnerships we can develop here. That's something I'm very interested in as somebody who is aspiring to be our Work and Pensions Secretary in a Labour government.
This week will be remembered, you think, for the week where the Labour Party has come out and said, India matters to us, and we are serious about India and we are resetting our ties.
I mean, absolutely. And I will just finally just want to say to everybody watching as a Leicester MP, the links between India and United Kingdom, between Leicester and India are strong. They will be strengthened, and I look forward to celebrating those links in the future. And in a few weeks' time in Leicester, we'll be celebrating our next Independence Day in August, and then later on in Leicester, October, November time, we'll be celebrating Diwali as well, and
your daughter's birthday,
and my daughter's birthday, and I may even do a bit of dancing at Navratri in September, October
That's
time.
absolutely fantastic. We should see that. We should see how that is going.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, if Labour Party has actually signalled a reset in its relation with India, let's now talk to one of the people who may have had something to do with that, or certainly trying to influence the policy that way. Uday Nagaraju, great to be with us. You're the director of the Labour Party's Friends of India. So you've been trying to make the Labour Party a little friendlier towards India. This week, you must be a happy man. A lot of it seems to have happened.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you for taking me on. And yes, I'm very happy. And I've always known, and as Labour Friends of India, we've always known Keir's stand on India and his interest both in the Indian community here and also India as a country. And that is now out in public for everyone, and we're pretty happy. Now, one thing is we don't need to do much with in Keir's leadership to actually get him to be pro-India. He's very much interested in the relationship with India, as you yourself have seen and interviewed him. The reset that he's talking about, and you can see the passion and the priority that he has for India and Indian community.
So what has changed? And perhaps so the new leader, clearly under Jeremy Corbyn, it seemed to be a very different policy. A lot of focus on, Kashmir was raised repeatedly, Khalistan, all of those issues were constantly. That seemed to be the priority for Labour. But Sir Keir seems to have signalled a completely different path now.
So when it comes to Keir's leadership, any issues, as he was mentioning, any issues that we might have had in the past, it's a complete reset, and even within the party as well, in terms of the engagement with the Indian community and in terms of with India. Now, very interesting thing if you see for the Labour's 5 pledges. One of them, he in his speech he has referred to the relationship with India, out of which that can be mapped to 2 of the Labour's 3 of the 5 main pledges, like economy, security, and also for NHS. And all these 3 areas where he's referring to in terms of collaboration with India could certainly kind of improve. And not only that, he's what he was referring to as the changed India, the modern India, the confident India, and we have to look at the country with respect and with mutual friendship, and we could work on some global issues in terms of global security, in terms of climate security, in terms of economic security, and other areas like AI and skills as well. So it's a complete reset, as he pointed out.
So what is driving this could be one of 2 things. Number one is the recognition of India's position on the global stage, right? 5th largest economy, and everything else that we know likely to become the 3rd largest within a few years. Is that it? Or also partly a recognition of the important role that the Indian diaspora is playing out here? It's a very affluent diaspora that's giving back a lot to Britain.
So I think both. One, definitely recognizing India's position on globe, and the mutual two big democracies, two progressive democracies, and what the mutual interest that we have globally, and areas that we could work together. That is definitely one part. The second is about the contribution of Indian community, particularly, for instance, as he was referring to the NHS, the contribution of our doctors, of our nurses, and he was even, though it's non-partisan, he was even referring to the contribution of Indian community in running the country as well. Though we want Keir Starmer to take the job, he was quite positive about that we have a British Indian Prime Minister. We are proud of it.
So there you have it, following on from what seemed to have been a fairly dramatic week with lots of meaningful announcements in the United States. This has also been a fairly meaningful week in the UK, with the Labour Party signalling a major reset at the India Global Forum. And to get a sort of a closing view on that, who better to talk to than Manoj Ladra, who's the person behind the India Global Forum, who's put all of this together. Manoj, how do you get everyone from Labour to come out here and change their stance and say we actually love India and we're going to be a completely different party?
I think it's very simple. India is a country on the move. India is a country that is attracting a huge amount of attention because it is now the fastest growing large economy in the world. It's the most populous nation, and it's throwing up so many unicorns, so many trained personnel that the world is now looking to India as the future or the current growth engine for the world, sir.
So Manoj, very clearly, it's almost significant that you had almost more people from the Labour Party here than you actually did from the Conservatives, which is a really dramatic turnaround from the Corbyn era.
Well, yes, I think in many ways, as the Labour Party seeks election to form the next government, you will naturally see that they wish to engage with in a way that they look as though they are ready for power. And India is one of the most important countries in the world, most important countries for the UK. So it's quite natural for there to be an increasing amount of engagement. What has been quite dramatic is the way in which the Labour Party has actually reached out and Sir Keir Starmer talking about the reset and looking forward and being so positive about all the different areas within which he sees collaboration.
But of course, it's not just Labour. We did hear, the Prime Minister also speaking, talking in very positive terms about the relationship with India. Sort of that's the big story right then, that there's a bipartisan consensus then on India?
Absolutely. I think that you have a position now where we have a non-partisan view as far as India is concerned. There was a moment in time not so long ago where that India and the British Indian community were almost like treated like a political football. But now you have a situation where there's positivity on both sides of the aisle, and I think that can only be good for the UK and India as it moves towards deeper economic and strategic engagement.
Okay, so what's next from here on? I mean, everyone's going to now sit back and wait for the elections to see who actually wins, or does it not matter?
No, absolutely not. Look, and there's a lot of conversations around, of course, the free trade agreement and the negotiations that happen there. I just say to everybody, well, that will take its course, but there's a whole gamut of conversations and partnerships that the UK and India have in defence, in intellectual property, in education and skills, which
AI increasing by both sides.
Absolutely, where not only will both parties be economic partners, but it seems that they're moving closer towards strategic relationships in all of these very, very important areas.
And there's an important aspect to the last thing, which I'd just like to end on. What we heard emerging from the United States was not just a strategic partnership or a defense partnership or a people-to-people partnership. Underlying it all was a technological partnership, because there's a view that India is now the partner to have for technology. That's what we seem to have heard a lot of from Britain also. So both Britain and the transatlantic alliance essentially is saying India is our technological partner.
Yes, and if you just look at one aspect of technology, fintech, the UK is, and London has been the financial capital of the world and a leader in fintech. And I think there's a huge amount of learning on both sides in that area with India and its the India stack and how that.
I was about to say, I thought India was now the leader in fintech.
Well,
you can't. No, you can't pay people using their mobile phone as easily here. I'm struggling to get people, payments the way you're used to doing it back in India.
Well, that's the real opportunity, and I think that with the combination of the real firepower of AI, there are limitless possibilities, not just for the bilateral relationship, but for what that could mean for the world and a more equitable, more economically prosperous world as well.
And that's all we have for you on this episode of the India Story. But we'll be back again next week with all the big stories relating to the India Story, all the big guests as well. Thanks so much, and goodbye from London.